Welcome to Latchkey History. And welcome to fitting 8 billion people into Los Angeles. If you look at a satellite map of the Earth at night, you see a planet that looks like it is bursting at the seams. Europe is a blazing web of light. The eastern seaboard of the United States is basically one continuous glowing city. Japan, India, eastern China, they look like they are on fire with human activity. When you live in one of these places, fighting traffic on the 405 or squeezing onto a subway car in Tokyo, the world feels overwhelmingly full. But what if I told you that this is an optical illusion? It is simply a trick played on us by our own perspective. If you analyze the data, specifically the relationship between the human population and the physical land we occupy, you reach a conclusion that sounds, on its face, incorrect. The conclusion, you ask? The Earth, for the most part, is completely empty, and it has been this way for all of recorded history. Let's start with a thought experiment to visualize just how small the human footprint physically is. Let's take every single human being alive right now, all 8 billion of us. Let's imagine we ask everyone to travel to one location for a massive group photo. We aren't going to give everyone a house or a yard, we are just going to ask them to stand. If you pack a crowd tightly, like at a concert or a busy festival, you can fit about 4 people into a square meter. If you stood all 8 billion humans shoulder to shoulder, creating a singular ocean of humanity, how much space would we cover? You might think we'd cover a country like France, or at least a massive state like Texas. But the math says otherwise. You could fit the entire human population, all 8 billion of us, inside the city limits of Los Angeles. Not the county, the city. That is about 500 square miles. Think about that. If you put all of humanity in LA, the rest of the world would be completely empty. The cafes in Paris, the skyscrapers in New York, the suburbs of Sydney, all empty. The entire rest of the planet would be devoid of life. Now, obviously, we have never lived standing shoulder to shoulder. We need spaces to live in, we need places to work in, and now we need roads to drive on. So let's zoom out and look at our actual man-made environment. This is what geographers call the physical footprint of civilization: concrete, asphalt, buildings, rooftops. This environment has virtually exploded in the past 125 years or so. If you calculate the total surface area of the Earth that is covered by human structures today, the number is shockingly low. Estimates vary depending on how you define a settlement, but most data suggests that human settlements cover roughly 1% of the Earth's habitable land. You heard that right, 1%. This obviously seems contradictory given the daily experience of most of us. When you drive across a state or fly over a country, it feels like we are everywhere. But that's because we are an edge species. We cling to the roads, the rivers, and the coastlines. This is largely a tradition we carry on from our ancestors. Many people stayed in groups to survive. They built their homes next to water for fish or fresh water. They built their homes in forests because food was plentiful, and there was wood for fires and shelter. They built near roads for access to food and trade. Now, years later, many of us are still drawn to where the food, warmth, shelter, and trade is. Look at a population density map of Egypt. It is perhaps the starkest example of this. Egypt is a huge country, but 95% of its population lives on just 5% of its land. Most cling to the Nile River like a lifeline, because throughout history, that is exactly what it has been: a source of fresh water, fish, goods, and trade. Thanks to electricity, today you can see it clearly if you look at a nighttime sat map of Egypt. You will see one glowing flower stem winding through the dark, and that flower then blooming at the delta. To the left and right of that line, vast portions of absolute nothingness. Of course, this is the rule, not the exception. As was said before, this is largely our nature. We clump, we cluster. We are a social species, but we are also a biological one with strict requirements. We need food, we need water, we need arable soil, we need a temperature that doesn't kill us. And the Earth, to us, frankly, is mostly hostile. When we say the Earth is empty, we have to account for why it's empty. A massive chunk of our planet is ocean. Of the land that remains, a huge percentage is what we call barren land: the Sahara Desert, the Gobi, the frozen wastes of Siberia and Antarctica, the high peaks of the Himalayas. We don't live there because we can't. We cluster into the Goldilocks zones, the temperate, fertile bands where life is abundant and less harsh. Although seashells found in many deserts around the world tell a different tale from Earth's past. But that's for another story. Let's start with a caution to this empty Earth theory, and it's a big one. It's the difference between our physical footprint and our ecological footprint. Remember, we said we only occupy about 1% of the land with our man-made environment. This is true. Today, however, we also utilize a vast amount of land simply to keep us alive. Think of humanity like an iceberg. The cities, the concrete and steel we see, are just the tip sticking out of the water. The massive, invisible chunk of ice beneath the surface is agriculture. To feed 8 billion people, over time, we literally terraformed the planet. Roughly half of all the habitable land on Earth is now used for agriculture. That is roughly 48 million square kilometers, or 18,532,904 miles. That is about 5 times the size of the United States. So, while we are not living on that land, we have certainly conquered it. This is where the paradox lies. If you were an alien flying over Earth looking for buildings, you would assume the planet is abandoned. But if you were looking for impact, you would say the planet is fully engineered. Yet, despite this agricultural sprawl, there is still a surprising amount of true wilderness left. And here is where the trend gets interesting. Today, humans are actually fleeing the countryside. For the first time in recorded human history, the majority of humans live in cities. For comparison, in the United States, in the year 1850, 60% of the population lived on farms. Today, that figure has plummeted, with farm families comprising less than 2% of the population. We are now seeing a phenomenon called rural depopulation. In Japan, they have a word for it, Akiya. It refers to ghost houses in the countryside that are abandoned because the younger generations have moved to Tokyo, Osaka, or other population centers. You see a similar phenomenon in parts of Spain, Italy, and the American Great Plains. As we become more technologically advanced, we are packing ourselves tighter and tighter into dense urban cores. This actually means that parts of the Earth are becoming emptier. We are, in essence, retreating from the wild. There are forests in the northern hemisphere that are larger today than they were 100 years ago. This is predominantly because we stopped chopping them down for firewood in small-scale farms and started living in efficient heated and cooled spaces. Have you ever flown across a continent at night? If you fly from New York to Los Angeles, you spend the first hour looking at a galaxy of lights. But once you cross the Mississippi and head toward the Rockies, look out the window. You will stare into total darkness for 20, 30 minutes at a time. You might see a single lonely light from a farmhouse every 50 miles. This is a reminder of just how vast and silent the planet actually is. We have the space. Physically, we have immense amounts of space, but we lack the resources to make that space livable without destroying the biosphere that keeps us alive. So, is the Earth full? In terms of resources, yes, it is very full. But is the Earth full of people? In terms of pure geography, absolutely not. We remain a tiny layer of biology painted on a massive rock. We are still clustered, huddled together against the cold, leaving the vast majority of our world to the silence of the deserts, the forests, and the oceans. We feel big, but when you look at the map, the real map, you realize just how small we really are. Thanks for watching Fitting 8 Billion People into Los Angeles. And see you next time on Latchkey History.